All right, it's been a crazy week, but now I'm finally able to upload a couple of videos here on the weekend. Normally, I'd be doing these all during the week. Hopefully, I get back on my regular schedule here this next week. We'll see how things go. But I've got to do my last book club over In Defense of Ska. I finished the book a few days ago, maybe Friday, Thursday, somewhere in there. And I've been eager to talk about what I thought of the book and kind of the rest of what's going on. I think that the chapter that I left off on in this book was, I think I was on the chapter about, I'm almost there, about My Boy Lollipop, which deals with Millie Small and sort of her recording of that song, My Boy Lollipop. It deals with a lot of sort of the older vibe on ska and kind of the way things worked in the studio back then. Really interesting history in that chapter. Talks about what worked, what didn't work. My favorite part of that chapter, though, is it gets to this part where it talks about Fishbone doing the movie Back to the Beach, which was my first interaction with ska ever. So that movie came out in like 1985, I think, and Fishbone does this, it's essentially it's a cover song that Annette Funicello did called Jamaica Ska, and they kind of do it with her, and that movie's a crazy movie. It's got Pee Wee Herman in it, it's got the guy from The Love Boat, all these kinds of things. So it kind of talks about how that them recording that was out kind of a nose in the air to Walt Disney's sort of racist history, which is crazy. Really interesting history there. Then it talks about, we get to this next chapter called Chris Candy's Secret. This chapter was super cool to me too, because it talks about how John Larroquette, was talking about ska on a show, which I loved, Night Court, so that was kind of a cool connection. But Chris Candy, like John Candy's son. So I'm a huge John Candy fan. Like, one of my family's favorite movies growing up was Stink. Now I can't remember the name of it. It slipped my mind. But it's one where they're out at this cabin in the woods, and they have to deal with this bear, and I love that movie. And so this is John Candy's son, Chris Candy, and kind of how he's a passionate fan of ska and how he ended up kind of being in these different bands over time. So that was really, really cool. Then there's this story about Aaron Carnes' own band, Flat Planet, and kind of the crazy things that they would do to entertain their fans. And there's this crazy story about a guy who, like, one of the guys in the band smeared himself all over with peanut butter, and then it like froze on him, and he couldn't like take a bath or shower to clean it off, so he had that peanut butter on him for days. So that's kind of a funny story. There's some stuff in here about how MTV picked up the story of ska and sort of the Scatterday vibe, and it goes into, I'm going to kind of flip through here a little bit more and go a little bit faster. It talks about sort of the difference between the skinheads, the sharps, the racist skinheads, that kind of stuff. It talks about that history, which is really interesting. A lot of stuff in here about Hepcat in this chapter, which is really good. Crab Rangoon, so we get into some more history of MU330. That's a real short chapter, but really, really fascinating. There's a chapter in here about Blue Rhythm Band song Nancy Reagan, and it kind of goes into talking about Blue Rhythm Band themselves. So that's really interesting. Also interesting how they sort of meant this song to just be kind of fun, and how it ended up sort of taking on these political overtones. And it kind of talks about how reggae got involved. There's some more in here about Flat Planet and their history, and about this guy that Aaron got to know named Marcel, who lived in Europe, and they sort of started trading tapes. I think he lived in Europe. Let me make sure I'm right on that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure it out like that quick, but they start trading tapes, and that's how they kind of shared their passion for ska, and sort of passing these tapes back and forth and getting to know other bands that they hadn't heard, and it just sort of like, it was a German guy, yeah. And so they're passing these tapes back and forth, and how it expanded their knowledge of ska, and how they and the passion behind it, the cassette tape culture of sharing albums back and forth. There's an album here called, or a chapter here called "Ska is Dead," and this deals with Jeff Rosenstock's history. Which, if you're not familiar with Jeff Rosenstock, he played in a couple of really, really important bands. He played in the band Arrogant Sons of Bitches, and he played in... so it goes through that history, sort of the passion of that band, and then it goes into Bomb the Music Industry. And then it also talks about Jeff Rosenstock's sort of solo stuff as well, a little bit, which I've got a Jeff Rosenstock album on pre-order right now, so I'm super excited to get that in. Then it kind of talks about like 80s bands and their history with ska music. Specifically talks about the Waitresses quite a bit, which is pretty cool. Very cool chapter. Some more stuff about Skank and Pickle and their touring and playing kind of their last shows together and kind of their breakup and what happened from that. Gosh, I don't want to, I feel like I'm just kind of going through chapter by chapter, and I wanted to do that a little bit, but I guess the last couple of chapters really deal with the Latin American ska scene, especially in Mexico. So this is where I give my overall thoughts on the book. I love this book. It's not a perfect book. There's some formatting issues that are, interesting in there. There's some issues with the pictures not lining up quite right, or making big space. What it really makes the book look like is like it's a DIY kind of punk book in a way. And that's really cool. That's something that I really love about it. The passion behind the book, the stories behind the book, the history in the book are really fascinating. And I feel like anybody that really loves ska should definitely own this book, because your understanding, your love, your passion for ska is only going to be enriched by this book. So on a scale of 1 to 5 stars that Goodreads asks you to do, I gave it 4 stars, and I think that it's a solid 4 stars. There are parts of it that I could probably say this part right here is 5 stars. I love it. So I really highly recommend that you pick up this book if you haven't yet. I've been really enjoying it, and so the book, one more time, is... that's the wrong thing. The book is In Defense of Ska by Aaron Carnes. I know you can order this through Bad Time Records. You can order it from, get your local bookstore to carry it. You can order it off Amazon. But definitely get yourself a copy of this.